When I was young, I thought life, a user's manual, would teach me how to live, and suicide, a user's manual, how to die. I've spent 3 years and 3 months abroad. I prefer to look to my left. I have a friend who gets off on betrayal. The end of a trip leaves me with a sad aftertaste, the same as the end of a novel. I forget things I don't like. I may have spoken, without knowing it, to someone who killed someone. I look down dead-end streets. I'm not afraid of what comes at the end of life. I don't really listen to what people are saying. I'm surprised when someone gives me a nickname and we hardly know each other. I'm slow to notice when someone mistreats me. It's always so surprising. Evil is somehow unreal. I archive. I spoke to Salvador Dali when I was 2. Competition does not drive me. To describe my life precisely would take longer than to live it. I wonder if I will turn reactionary with age. When I sit with bare legs on vinyl, my skin doesn't slide, it squeaks. I have cheated on 2 women. I told them, one didn't care, one did. I joke about death. I do not love myself. I do not hate myself. I do not forget to forget. I do not believe in the existence of Satan. My rap sheet is clean. I wish this season lasted a week. I would rather be bored alone than with someone else. I wander empty places and eat in deserted restaurants. When it comes to food, I prefer the savory to the sweet, the raw to the cooked, the hard to the soft, the cold to the hot, the aromatic to the odorless. I cannot sit still and write unless there is food in the refrigerator. I can easily go without drinking or smoking. In a foreign country, I hesitate to laugh when my interlocutor burps while we were talking. I notice gray hair on people too young to have it. It's better for me not to read medical textbooks, especially passages describing the symptoms of some illness. No sooner do I find out one exists than I detect it in myself. War seems so unreal to me I have trouble believing my father was in one. I have seen a man who expressed one thing with the left side of his face and something else with the right. I'm not sure I love New York. I do not say A is better than B, but I prefer A to B. I never stop comparing. When I am coming back from a trip, the best part isn't going through the airport or getting home, but the taxi ride in between. You're still traveling, but not really. I sing badly, so I don't sing. Because I am funny, people think I'm happy. I want never to find an ear in a meadow. I am no fonder of words than of a hammer or a vice. I do not know the green boys. In the store windows of English-speaking countries, I read the word sale, dirty, in French. I cannot sleep beside someone who moves around, snores, breathes heavily, or steals the covers. I can sleep with my arms around someone who doesn't move. I had an idea for a dream museum. I have a tendency, because it's easier, to call people friends who aren't. I can't think of another word for people whom I know, I like, but with whom I have no special connection. On the train, facing backward, I do not see things coming, only going. I am not saving for my retirement. I consider the best part of the sock to be the hole. I do not keep track of how much money is in my bank account. My bank account is rarely in the red. Showa, Numero 0, Mobutu King of Zaire, E.R., Titicut Follies, and La Conquête de Clichy have affected me more than the best works of fiction. The ready-made films of Jean-Marc Capulli have made me laugh harder than the best comedies. I have attempted suicide once. I have been tempted 4 times to attempt it. The distant sound of a lawnmower in summer brings back happy childhood memories. I am bad at throwing. There was a compulsive collector in my family. At her death, they found a shoebox labeled in painstaking calligraphy. Little bits of string that have no use. I do not believe the wisdom of the sages will be lost. I once tried to make a book museum of vernacular writing. It reproduced handwritten messages from unknown people, classed by type. Flyers about lost animals, justifications left on windshields for parking cops so as to avoid putting money in the meter, desperate appeals for witnesses, announcements of a change in management, office messages, home messages, messages to oneself. I have thought, listening to an old man tell me his life story, this man is a museum of himself. I have thought, listening to the son of an American black radical talk, this man is ready-made. I have thought, seeing a man who had wasted away, this man is a ghost of himself. My parents went to the movies every Friday night until they got a TV. I like the straightforward sound of a paper bag, but not of a plastic bag, which fidgets. I have heard but never seen fruit fall from the branch. Proper names fascinate me because I don't know what they mean. I have a friend who, when he has people over for dinner, never sets out serving dishes but arranges the food on plates like a restaurant, so there's no way to have seconds. I have lived for several years without insurance. I sometimes feel uneasier around a nice person than a mean one. My worst memories of traveling are funnier in the telling than my good ones. It disconcerts me that a child should address me as Monsieur. A swingers club was the first place I ever saw people make love in front of me. I have not masturbated in front of a woman. I masturbate less to pictures than to memories. I have never regretted saying what I really thought. Love stories bore me. I never tell my own. I don't talk much about women I go out with, but I like hearing my friends talk about the women they go out with. A woman came to meet me in a distant country after a month and a half apart. I hadn't missed her. Within seconds I realized I didn't love her anymore. In India, I traveled in a train compartment with a Swiss man whom I didn't know. We were crossing the plains of Kerala. I told him more about myself in several hours than I had told my best friends in several years. I knew I would never see him again. He was an ear without repercussions. I have sometimes been suspicious. Looking at old photos leads me to believe that the body evolves. I reproach others for what they reproach in me. I am not stingy. I admire money well spent. I like certain uniforms not as symbols, but for their functional sobriety. I will sometimes announce good news concerning myself to someone I like and be shocked to realize that he's jealous. I would not like to have famous parents. I am not handsome. I am not ugly. From certain angles, tanned and wearing a black shirt, I can find myself handsome. I find myself ugly more often than handsome. The times I find myself handsome are not the times I'd like to be. I find myself uglier in profile than straight on. I like my eyes, my hands, my forehead, my ass, my arms, my skin. I do not like my thighs, my elbows, my chin, my ears, the curve at the back of my neck, my nostrils from below. I have no opinion about my dick. My face is asymmetrical. The left side of my face looks nothing like the right. I like my voice after a night out or when I have a cold. I don't need anything. I am not looking to seduce a wearer of Birkenstocks. I do not like the big toe. I wish I had no nails. I wish I had no beard to shave. I have no interest in awards. I have no respect for distinctions. I don't care what I'm paid. I'm drawn to strange people. I feel sympathy for the unlucky. I do not like paternalism. I feel more at ease with the old than with the young. I can ask endless questions of people I think I will never see again. Someday I will wear black cowboy boots with a purple velvet suit. To me, the smell of manure recalls a bygone era, where the smell of wet earth evokes no particular time. I can't remember the name of a person I've just met. I'm not ashamed of my family, but I do not invite them to my openings. I have often been in love. I love myself less than I have been loved. I'm surprised when someone loves me. I do not consider myself handsome just because a woman thinks so. My intelligence is uneven. My amorous states resemble each other, and those of other people, more than my works resemble each other, or those of other people. I find something pleasant in the pain of a fading love. I have never had a shared bank account. A friend once remarked that I seem glad when guests show up at my house, but also when they leave. I begin more than I finish. I show up at people's houses more easily than I leave. I do not know how to interrupt an interlocutor who bores me. I will gorge on an all-you-can-eat buffet to the point of nausea. I have good digestion. I love summer rain. Other people's failures make me sadder than my own. I do not rejoice in my enemies' failures. I have trouble understanding why people give stupid presents. Presents make me feel awkward, whether I am the giver or the receiver, unless they are the right ones, which is rare. Love has given me great pleasure, but takes up too much time. As the surgeon's scalpel reveals my organs, love introduces other versions of myself, whose obscene novelty disgusts me. I am not ill. I go to the doctor no more than once a year. I am nearsighted and slightly astigmatic. I have never kissed a lover in front of my parents. In Corsica, some friends took me to a beginner's class in underwater diving. A teacher led me down 6 meters in a few seconds. My left ear popped. Back on the surface, I had lost my sense of balance. Since then, whenever I'm in an airplane, I feel a needle pricking my inner ear, until, all at once, the air rushes out of my eardrum. I do not know the names of flowers. I recognize the chestnut tree, the lime tree, the poplar, the willow, the weeping willow, the oak, the chestnut, the pine, the fir, the beech, the sycamore, the hazelnut, the apple, the cherry, the lilac, the plum, the pear, the fig, the cedar, the sequoia, the baobab, the palm tree, the coconut, the live oak, the maple, the olive. I can name, but do not recognize, the ash, the aspen, the spindle tree, the strawberry tree, the bougainvillea, the catalpa. I have kept guppies, Sumatran brill, neons, a fish striped yellow and black and shaped like a snake, and other aquarium fish whose names I have forgotten. I had a female hamster named Pirouette because she loved her turquoise plastic wheel and ran so fast in it that it would spin her all the way around. A woman friend whose English isn't good heard "C'est quelque chose" for "set in your shoes" in the song Let's Groove. At times I have run down dark paths. An uncle would play Scorlipo-Chant 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 with me. I had to say Scorlipo-Chant 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 while he was tickling me. One of my uncles had a taste for scandal and pranks. He'd shoplift just for fun. He would buy Harakiri magazine and let me read it. He would pretend to be retarded at the beach. He would pounce yelling and drooling on a sunbathing woman. He'd ask questions using non-existent words of the farmer's wife who lived down the road. He would call strangers on the phone and pretend they had a snake waiting to be picked up at Orly Airport. He went to the casino until he was definitively and cheerfully banned. He tried to win back the leases of nightclubs that his father had won at poker, and he ended up getting drunk when the mafioso landlords plied him with champagne. I wonder how I would behave under torture. At a museum, I look at people with the eyes of an artist, in the street with my own. I know 4 names for God. A friend told me that to yawn 4 times was the equivalent of 15 minutes sleep. I'd often tried this without noting any benefits. I've known climates that went from 25 below to over 45 degrees Celsius. I have met Catholics, Protestants, Mormons, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, Amish, Jehovah's Witnesses, Scientologists. I have seen earth, mountains, and sea. I have seen lakes, rivers, creeks, brooks, torrents, waterfalls. I have seen volcanoes. I have seen estuaries, coasts, islands, continents. I have seen caves, canyons, fairy hats. I have seen deserts, beaches, dunes. I have seen the sun and the moon. I have seen stars, comets, and eclipse. I have seen the Milky Way. I am no longer 10 years old. I have never believed that you could see a dahu. I wonder if there are blasphemers of Satan, and if to blaspheme against him is a sin, from his point of view, but also from God's. Monsters interest me. When I see the words "code pin OK" on French bank machines, I read it as "code Pinochet." Solitude helps me be consistent. A friend of my parents was 50 before she learned that there is no such thing as elbow grease. I did not know how to answer when a grown-up asked, "Is that lie really true?" I forced myself to smile when a grown-up said, "Go see if I'm over there." My father is funny. My mother loves me without smothering me. I discovered dirty pictures and a little blue pamphlet which described certain sins and which a priest had given me before my first confession to help me remember the ones I might have committed. I attended a school that employed several pedophiles, but I was not among their victims. One of my schoolmates, at age 12, was followed by an old man into a stairwell, where he dragged him into a basement to have his way with him. The dog belonging to a friend of mine disfigured his best friend when my friend was 14. I have never missed a flight that then exploded in mid-air. I almost killed 3 passengers in my car by looking for a cassette in the glove compartment while I was going 180 on the highway from Paris to Reims. My father walked in on me making love to a woman. When he knocked, I said, without thinking, "Come in." Blushing, he quickly backed out and closed the door. When my girlfriend tried to slip away, he went up to her and said, "Come back whenever you like, mademoiselle." Like most people, I have no idea where the city I live in got its name. One of my uncles died of AIDS soon after the art gallery in which he'd invested all his money went out of business. One of my uncles met the love of his life while driving his red convertible slowly through the streets of Paris. The man in question, a Hungarian immigrant, was in despair, wandering aimlessly and about to kill himself. My uncle pulled up next to him and asked where he was headed. They never parted until death came between them. My uncle's friend taught me to laugh at things I saw on TV that were not, on the face of it, funny. For example, Bobby Ewing's hairstyle on Dallas. I have not signed a manifesto. If I turn around while looking in the mirror, there comes a moment when I no longer see myself. Raymond Poulidor is one of the least sexy names I know. I like salad mainly for the crunch and the vinaigrette. I do not like to hear people quote bon mots, especially those of Sacha Guitry. I delight in the wrapping paper before acceding to the object. Visiting churches bores me. I wonder whether, apart from a few specialists, anybody enjoys it very much. I do not know the name of the stars. I often plan to learn long texts by heart in order to boost my memory. I see fantastical beings in the clouds. I have never seen a geyser, an atoll, an undersea trench. I have never done time in prison. I like dim lights. I have never filed a complaint with the police. I have never been burgled. When I was 12, I took the metro with 3 classmates. A stranger my age bent my arm around my back. Another, about 15 years old, kicked me in the face. I fell down. When I got up, he was about to give me another kick, so I pretended to be in more pain than I was, grabbing my face with both hands and screaming as if he'd smashed it in. The attackers got scared and ran away, at which point my 3 friends, who'd been standing there 3 meters away, ran up to me. I noticed the face of one had gone white with cowardice. My parents do not ask me enough questions. I once went into a prison where I was taking pictures of the inmates in Rome, New York. A guard stopped me. He took me to the assistant warden. My film was confiscated. It also included photos of Jehovah's Witnesses, taken in Paris, New York. I have sold works to collectors from France, Austria, Spain, Germany, Italy, America, and possibly other countries. If over time a woman I'm seeing starts to use the expressions I do, I may begin to pity her. I wish there were regions where every day was the same day of the week. I could decide to go spend 5 Mondays in one city and 8 Saturdays in another. I wish there was a city where everyone was named Jean or Jean. It would be called Jeanville. Names draw me to places, but bodies draw me to people. I forget that certain names of objects refer to actions. For example, watch. I wonder whether anyone besides old people like riot police. I fetishize handwriting. When I choose postcards from a place, I am tempted to vary the pictures, rather than picking several with the best picture, which is absurd, since they're all going to different addressees. When I write several postcards on the same day, I force myself not to describe the same events, as if the addressees might one day realize that I had written the same postcard several times over. I've taken a ride through the ravines of the Golden Triangle on the back of a blind elephant who found his way by feeling around with his feet. My brother builds. I mistakenly studied difficult subjects that were no use to me when I might have studied the arts for pleasure, which would have smoothed my path. I am happy to be happy. I am sad to be sad. But I can also be happy to be sad and sad to be happy. Lack of sleep bothers me less on a sunny day than when it rains. I find someone beautiful regardless of the moment, but I don't always find myself handsome, therefore I am not. I sometimes talk to my dick, addressing it by its first name. I appreciate the mowed hay smell of Levi's 501s. I do not tell stories because I forget the people's names. I report the events out of order and do not set up the punchline. On trips, I surprise myself. For example, I decide at a moment I do not expect that the trip is over. With a dictaphone, I write easily while thinking of something else. I've written several love letters, but no breakup letters. I save that job for my voice. I would rather paint chewing gum up close than Versailles from far away. I touch white for luck. I do not have a weekend place because I don't like to open and then to close a whole lot of shutters over the course of 2 days. I would pay someone to air out, heat, and clean a country house before I came to stay, so I could have the feeling that someone lived there. Although I am self-employed, I observe the weekend. My surname is ridiculous, but I am fond of it. I even teach it to people who don't know it. I pack my luggage by making a list of all the things I will take, and since I always take the same things, I keep the list in a file on my computer. I reuse grocery bags as trash bags. I separate my recycling, more or less. Drinking puts me to sleep. In Hong Kong, I knew someone who went out 3 nights a week, no more, no less. I believe that democracy is spreading in the world. The modern man, I sing. I feel better lying down than standing up, and better standing than seated. I admire the person who thought up the title, The Last House on the Left. A friend told me about the Red Man of Tuileries. I don't remember what he did, but the name still gives me shivers. The pediatrician my mother took me to humiliated generations of children, including me, with this riddle. If Vincent leaves a donkey in one meadow and goes into another meadow, how many donkeys are there? All said in a measured voice. Then he'd say, "There's only one donkey. You." To any child, that is, every child, who didn't answer one. I want to write sentences that begin ultimately. I can understand, it's the end. It's the beginning of the end. It's the beginning of the end of the beginning. But once we get to, it's the beginning of the end of the beginning of the end of the beginning, all I hear is a bunch of words. I have sometimes annoyed an interlocutor by systematically repeating the last word he said. I never get tired of saying, La fille à son père, grandfather's darling. One of my friends earns the admiration of some and the indifference of others by knowing the name and number of every département in France. My cousin Veronique is amazing. I sometimes think of the witty thing to say an hour later. At the table, I excuse myself for splashing food on the spotless shirt of a friend by telling him, "You got in the way of my juice." I take no pleasure in others' misfortunes. I do not bow down before a metal idol. I am not horrified by my heritage. I do not till the earth. I do not expect to discover new marvels in classical music, but am sure of taking pleasure until I die in the ones I already know. I do not know whether one can improve on the music of Bach, but one can certainly improve on the music of several others who shall remain nameless. I admit to being wrong. I do not fight. I have never punched anyone. I have noticed that, on the keypads of Parisian front doors, the one wears out the fastest. I have sometimes turned my interlocutors against me by an excess of argumentation. I do not listen to jazz. I listen to Thelonious Monk, John Coltrane, Chet Baker, Billie Holiday. I sometimes feel like an imposter without knowing why, as if a shadow falls over me and I can't make it go away. If I travel with someone, I see half as much of the country as if I traveled by myself. One of my friends likes to travel in certain Middle Eastern countries where there is nothing to see but airports, deserts, and roads. I have never regretted traveling by myself, but have sometimes regretted traveling with someone else. I read the Bible out of order. I do not read Faulkner because of the translation. I made a series of pictures based on things that came out of my body or grew on it. Whiskers, hair, nails, semen, urine, shit, saliva, mucus, tears, sweat, pus, blood. TV interests me more without the sound. Among friends, I can laugh hard at certain unfunny TV programs that depress me when I'm alone. I never quite hear what people say who bore me. To me, a simple no is pleasantly brief and upsettingly harsh. The noise level, when it's turned up too high in a restaurant, ruins my meal. If I had to emigrate, I would choose Italy or America, but I don't. When I'm in a foreign country, I dream of having a house in Provence, a project I forget when I get back. I rarely regret a decision and always regret not having made one. I think back on the pain of affairs that never took place. The highway bores me. There's no life on the side of the road. On the highway, the view is too far away from my imagination to bring it to life. I do not see what I lack. I have less desire to change things than to change my perception of them. I take pictures because I have no real desire to change things. I have no desire to change things because I am the youngest in my family. I like meeting new people when I travel. These brief and inconsequential encounters have the thrill of beginnings and the sadness of separations. I wanted to write a book entitled In the Car, made-up remarks recorded while driving. To take pictures at random goes against my nature, but since I like doing things that go against my nature, I have had to make up excuses to take pictures at random. For example, to spend 3 months in the United States, traveling only to cities that share a name with a city in another country. Berlin, Florence, Oxford, Canton, Jericho, Stockholm, Rio, Delhi, Amsterdam, Paris, Rome, Mexico, Syracuse, Lima, Versailles, Calcutta, Baghdad. When I decide to take a picture of someone I see in the street, I have 10 seconds to notice the person, decide to take the picture, and go ask. If I wait, it's too late. I wear glasses. In my mouth, time moves slowly for candy. I have deeper to dig in myself. I see art where others see things. Between the solitude of the womb and the solitude of the tomb, I will have hung out with lots of people. While driving a car past meadows, these words come to me. A tractor chicken and an elephant tent. I wish treatises were articles, not book length. In the United States, I came across a village called Seneca Falls, which I mistranslated Les Chutes de Sénéca, Seneca's Falls. I've seen an ad for a vegetarian vehicle. I would like to see movies accompanied by inappropriate music, a comedy with goth rock, a children's movie with music from a funeral, a romance with a brass band, a political film with a musical comedy soundtrack, a war movie with acid rock, porn with a choir. I make fewer and fewer excuses. After I lick an envelope, I spit. I don't want to die suddenly, but to see my death slowly incoming. I do not think I will end up in hell. It takes 5 minutes for my nose to forget a smell, even a very bad one. This doesn't go for what I perceive with my other senses. I have weapons in my brain. I have read this sentence on Kerouac. The war must have been getting in my bones. Although I've always translated Deer Hunter as Chasseur de Surf, I still hear the echo of the mistranslation Cher Chasseur, Deer Hunter. I remember what people tell me better than what I said. I expect to die at the age of 85. To drive at night through rolling hills by moonlight in summertime can make me shudder with pleasure. I look more closely at old photographs than contemporary ones. They are smaller, and their details are more precise. If not for religion and sex, I could live like a monk. My last and first names mean nothing to me. If I look in the mirror for long enough, a moment comes when my face stops meaning anything. I can stand around in several dozen different ways. I have carried women in my arms. I have not been carried by them. I have not hugged a male friend tight. I have not walked hand in hand with a male friend. I have not worn a friend's clothing. I have not seen the dead body of a friend. I have seen the dead bodies of my grandmother and my uncle. I have not kissed a boy. I used to have sex with women my own age, but as I got older, they got younger. I do not buy used shoes. I had an idea for an Amish punk band. Only once was I the first occupant of an apartment. I got into a motorcycle accident that could have cost me my life, but I don't have any bad memories of it. The present interests me more than the past, and less than the future. I have nothing to confess. I have trouble believing that France will go to war in my lifetime. I like to say thank you. I cannot perceive the delay in mirrors. I don't like narrative movies more than I like the novel. I do not like the novel doesn't mean that I do not like literature. I don't like narrative movies doesn't mean that I don't like movies. Art that unfolds over time gives me less pleasure than art that stops it. The second time I walk the same route, I pay less attention to the view and walk faster. I let the phone ring until the answering machine screens the call. I spend 2 hours talking to one friend, but it only takes 5 minutes to end my conversation with another. When I'm on the phone, I don't make any effort with my face. If I put off a phone call where something is at stake, the wait becomes more difficult than the call. I'm impatient when waiting for a phone call, but not sure when I have to make one. I have more good memories than bad ones. When I'm sure I like an article of clothing, I buy a few of the same one. I do not wish to shine. At 16, I bought a varsity jacket. It was aquamarine with beige leather sleeves. I only wore it twice. I felt, wrongly, that everyone was looking at me. I have read The Critique of Judgment. I used to make the stretchers for the canvases I painted. I have let several friends copy from me in class. When I was 13, in the Galeries Lafayette, I stole several records. I put them under my arm. I strolled nonchalantly down the lingerie aisle, where I slipped them into my bag. As I left the store, someone grabbed my scarf from behind. I turned around. It was a 50-year-old security guard. She took me into a fluorescent-lit office. She threatened to call the police. I made myself cry. I said my parents were unemployed and about to get a divorce, which was untrue. She let me go. She seemed embarrassed, almost guilty. Since then, I have stolen books once and once some paper clips, without really knowing why. I get excited by the idea of reading the biography of an author I love, and when I actually do it, I lose steam. I have read only 4 biographies all the way through. Raymond Roussel by François Caradec, Blue Monk by Jacques Ponzio and François Postif, La Vie douloureuse de Charles Baudelaire by François Porchet, and Kerouac, a biography by Anne Charters. I spend a lot of time reading, but I do not consider myself a big reader. I reread. On my shelves I count as many books read as unfinished. Counting up the books I have read, I cheat by counting the ones I didn't finish. I will never know how many books I have read. Raymond Roussel, Charles Baudelaire, Marcel Proust, Alain Robbe-Grillet, Antonio Tabucchi, André Breton, Olivier Cadeau, George Louis Borges, Andy Warhol, Gertrude Stein, Gerasim Luca, George Perec, Jacques Robond, Joe Brainerd, Roberto Horoz, Guy Debord, Fernando Pessoa, Jack Kerouac, La Rochefoucauld, Balthazar Gracian, Roland Barthes, Walt Whitman, Natalie Quintain, the Bible, and Bret Easton Ellis all matter to me. I have read less of the Bible than of Marcel Proust. I prefer Natalie Quintain to Balthazar Gracian. Guy Debord matters more to me than Roland Barthes. Roberto Horoz makes me laugh more than Andy Warhol. Jack Kerouac makes me want to live more than Charles Baudelaire. La Rochefoucauld depresses me less than Bret Easton Ellis. Olivier Cadieux cheers me up more than Andre Breton. Joe Brainerd is less affirmative than Walt Whitman. Raymond Roussel surprises me more than Balthazar Gracian, but Balthazar Gracian makes me more intelligent. Gertrude Stein writes texts more nonsensical than those of George Louis Borges. I read Bret Easton Ellis more easily on the train than Raymond Roussel. I know Jacques Roubaud less well than George Perec. Gerasim Luca is the most full of despair. I don't see the connection between Alain Robbe-Grillet and Antonio Tabucchi. When I make lists of names, I dread the ones I forget. I read for half an hour before I turn out the light. I read more in the morning and evening than in the afternoon. I do not use glasses for reading. I read from 30 centimeters away. I start to really read after 5 minutes. I read better without shoes or pants. Nights with a full moon I feel euphoric for no reason. I do not read at the beach. At the beach I stare off bored. Then I get used to it. Then I hate to leave. At the beach girls arouse me less than in the library. I like museums, mainly because they tire me out. I make no predictions. I like, in order of preference, swimming in the sea, in a lake, in a creek, in a pool. I have swum in the canyon of Gardon, near Colias. Flat and smooth rocks line the stream that flows softly at a pleasant temperature. I climbed over 300 meters to its source and came back without the slightest effort, as in a dream. The sun cast an orange sheen on the surface of the rocks. My eyes could see far into the distance, and my words echoed. I don't think about going to the movies. I have made love standing on the roof of Chateau de Tarascon during the opening of a show of André Pierre Arnauld. I have made love on the roof of the 13th floor of a building in Hong Kong. I have made love in the daytime in a public garden in Hong Kong. I have made love in the toilet of the Paris Lyon TGV. I have made love in front of some friends at the end of a very drunken dinner. I have made love in a staircase on the Avenue Georges Mandel. I have made love to a girl at a party at 6 a.m, 5 minutes after asking, without any preamble, if she wanted to. I have made love standing up, sitting down, lying down, on my knees, stretched out on one side or the other. I have made love to one person at a time, to 2, to 3, to more. I have smoked hashish and opium. I have done poppers. I have snorted cocaine. I find fresh air more intoxicating than drugs. I smoked my first joint at age 14 in Segovia. A friend and I had bought some chocolate from a guard at the military police, and I couldn't stop laughing, and I ate the leaves of an olive tree. I smoked several joints on the grounds of my college grammar school, Le Collège Stanislas, at the age of 15. At 17 in Paris, I drove my parents' car without a license to take the girl home who had just spent part of the night with me. The girl whom I loved the most left me. I wear black shirts. At 10, I cut my finger in a flour mill. At 6, I broke my nose getting hit by a car. At 15, I skinned my hip and elbow by falling off a moped. I thought I would defy the street, riding with no hands, looking backward. I broke my thumb skiing, after flying 10 meters and landing on my head. I got up and saw, as in a cartoon, circles of birthday candles turning in the air, and then I fainted. I have not made love to the wife of a friend. On the internet, I become telepathic. I do not love the sound of the family on a train. I am uneasy in rooms with small windows. I wonder how the abyss make love. I feel good the moment I reach the top of a skyscraper. I could not live on a ground floor or in a basement. The higher the floor number, the better I feel. Sometimes I realize that what I'm in the middle of saying is boring, so I just stop talking. I used to think I worked better at night than in the daytime, until one day I bought black curtains. I used the shell of the first mussel to spoon out the rest. I can do without TV. I love saying poople instead of pull. I don't know which disturbs me more, an actor who goes into politics, Ronald Reagan, or a politician who takes up acting, Bernard Tapie. I had an idea for a gallery hanging that would begin 4 days after the opening, during which the people who came would have their pictures taken and be the subject of the exhibition. When I've slept badly, my breathing is shallow. I believe the people who make the world are the ones who do not believe in reality. For example, for centuries, the Christians. Not wanting to change things doesn't mean I'm conservative. I like for things to change, just not having to be the one who does it. I can't tell whether my fantasies match my capacities. I've spent 2 summers in a red van. Virtuosity annoys me. It confuses art with prowess. I have thought simultaneously, I really should learn the trombone, and there's a dead ant. If I get up early, the day feels longer than if I get up late, even if I spend the same amount of time awake. Smoking takes too long. Drinking helps me sleep, but keeps me from sleeping through the night. Drinking gives me a headache the morning after. I prefer movies with costumes from the future to ones with costumes from the past. My ideas are more my style than my words are. In a car, I look at things through the windshield as if they were in a tracking shot. Maybe I'm writing this book so I won't have to talk anymore. I've bought an apartment from a smiling crook. I do not explain. I do not excuse. I do not classify. I go fast. I do not name the people I talk about to someone who doesn't know them. I use, despite the trouble of it, abstract descriptions like, that friend whose parachute got tangled up with another parachute the time he jumped. In the morning, I spend half an hour lying in the dark before the alarm goes off. I prefer going to bed to getting up, but I prefer living to dying. I do not respond to unpleasant remarks, but I do not forget them. Certain people wear me out in seconds because I can tell they are going to bore me. In Versailles, New York, I photographed a 75-year-old man who wore black sunglasses, a cap, a stained white t-shirt under a Dickies brand chambray shirt, with the sleeves rolled up, beat-up jeans, and black work boots. He was sad and handsome. I found out his name was Edward Lee, almost like mine. Driving once, I thought I saw a road sign that said Cheese Clinic. I wondered whether they took care of cheese there, or of people using cheese. On the road I can be boxed in, or tailed, by the shadows of clouds. I watch the asphalt markings disappear under the hood of the car like strings of licorice. I find thin people make me feel young. Contemporary music generally seems aggressive to me, not because it's contemporary, but because it's full of aggression. Certain non-aggressive music by Ligeti, Cage, Messiaen, Lutowaski, Penderecki, Adams agrees with me. I like conversations you can interrupt without being rude. Phone conversations, conversations with neighbors over the fence, conversations with the regulars at bistros, conversations by strangers. My grandmother was introduced to my grandfather because they both liked gust of winds. One of my uncles answered an advertisement placed by a South African planter, seeking an orange grower, as follows. I know nothing about agriculture, but I am a quick study, and got the job. In South Africa, one of my aunts had a servant named Coca-Cola and another named Shell. In the mornings, one of my cousins and I used to play squirrels in a big bed. We'd hide under the covers. He would say, "A tunino tunin, tunin tunin tunin, a tunino tunin, tunindo nin," and click his tongue. In La Cruz, one of my cousins and I used to play farmer and little lamb. The lamb would roll around in his underpants in a trough made out of mud puddle. The farmer would watch him and play around vaguely with a stick. Mostly he was the lamb, I was the farmer. In Corsica, I used to play girl watcher. In Normandy, I used to play with action men. I have changed at least one tire. I have a white R5, a gray Fiat Uno, a gray BMW 316, a gray Volkswagen Polo Movie, a red Volkswagen Transporter. When I ride a motorcycle, I wear a thick black leather Vanson jacket, even in summer. In Paris, I ride a bike. I do not fall down in roller skates. I have a double chin. I do not wear black socks with shorts. I do not wear a wool sweater if my neck is damp. I will sign up for a paragliding course. I forget to watch TV. I do not have a favorite tree, a favorite singer, a favorite friend, a favorite pair of pants, a favorite dessert. I wear the clothes of a manual laborer. If I lean off a balcony with a desire to kill myself, vertigo saves me. I like watching anything shot on Super 8, even though this is in such predictable good taste. I have no inclinations toward pedophilia. Urine does not excite me, neither do dogs. I breathe well with my mouth open. If it didn't make me look stupid, I would keep my mouth open a lot of the time. Aviation does not interest me. My brother thought his turtle had run away. It dried up under a radiator. I have trouble remembering any truly happy moments. I would like to have myself hypnotized by my wife, but I'm not married. Contradicting myself brings two kinds of pleasure: betraying myself and having a new opinion. I do things better for pleasure and without trying. When I urinate in a public toilet, I breathe through my mouth, not my nose, even though it's closer than my nostrils to the source of the smell. At a public urinal, the presence of a neighbor delays my micturition. Into the sitting room of my parents' country house walked my godmother, her 3 children, and the girlfriend of one of her sons, whose beauty so overwhelmed me that I forgot to say hello to my godmother, and when she pointed out the omission, I walked over and shook her hand instead of giving her a kiss. I love the crackle of a parquet floor. I have flat feet. The cold of floorboards travels through my bare feet up to my shins, which get goosebumps. I can take seafood or leave it. Everything interests me a priori, but not posteriori. I do not think the dead are malevolent, since they are old people squared, and the old are less malevolent than the non-old. Virtuosity also bores me when it comes to roads. The highway is perfect and perfectly boring. If, driving fast, I don't use windshield wipers, the size of the raindrops shrink by evaporation. I could found an imprint for perversely themed guidebooks on the following subjects: McMansions, dangerous traffic lights, so-called museums, places where there's nothing much to see, places where an archbishop may have slept. Driving alone over a bridge mounted with sky-blue rails, I cried out with pointless joy and shouted nonsensical words. Listening to cheerful music is like spending time with people not like me. I have never attended a nudist funeral. I accept progress. I desire an object less if it was bought on sale. I am wary of shortcuts, which call the normal route into question. A hand that greets me by crushing my hand bodes no better than a hand that is soft or moist. When I laugh, I use fewer facial muscles than when I don't. To rest my face, I have to laugh. In a car, perfume makes me sick. When I am hungry, I feel thin. I liked Jimmy Carter. I wonder whether I admire faith or just people who have it. On the highway, if several cars are speeding, I follow them to divide up the risk of getting stopped. I have left a woman because she scolded me for not having picked up groceries. In a foreign country, the words missing from my pocket dictionary acquire an aura that doesn't fade when I learn their ostensible meanings. I am more excited by a woman's face than by her breasts, than by her pussy, than by her ass, than by her legs. Obesity fascinates me because it effaces sex and age. I stand up straighter when I walk with a knapsack than when I don't. My torso is too long for me to be comfortable in a car. I am afraid of doing worse by trying to do better. The dry look is an inexhaustible source of amusement when I'm alone. I have a feeling children of my own would bore me less than other people's. I do not sleep on satin sheets. I wonder how I can just suddenly come out with "ooh la la." The problem with amusement parks is the crowds. Empty, I find them beautiful. I I have smoked so much I felt sick. I am able to admire people who admire me. I do not embellish things or make them ugly either. I like serial music until the moment when, suddenly, I can't stand it. Listening to music in the car is a way of passing the time, thus shortening my life. My cars have always drifted to the right. Bad news makes me unhappy but satisfies my paranoia. I can see a lot of my body. My mother saved my life by giving me life.